Now I'll back up just a little bit and give you a picture of Alaska when I got here, Anchorage. Alaska was a total pioneer land. Anchorage had maybe 7,000 or 8,000 people in it. We had 7 men for every woman. We had maybe 3 or 4 blocks on 4th Avenue paved. The rest of the town had no pavement, no storm sewers. We had a pretty rough looking town. 4th Avenue had all the businesses on it, with the exception of the old Kimball store down on 5th Avenue, right across the street from Kimball's store on 5th Avenue. That is east, on the east corner across the street. There was a filling station. And then 2 blocks down the street, in an old metal building, was the Hoyt Motor Company. They sold Packards and Plymouths. That's was the business area. All the grocery stores, everything was down on 4th Avenue. The honky-tonks and saloons were down on 4th Avenue. Back in those days, the saloons and cafes, everything, except the retail stores, they weren't. But saloons and cafes were open 24 hours a day. The streets were full of servicemen, they were full of construction men up here away from their families. Gambling was almost totally unrestricted. Fact is, they gambled at tables in the saloons and bars. They played a game back in those days they called it pan. I never did know what it was, but they played it with 2 decks of cards. That was a great game that they played. Prostitution was obvious and unrestricted. Nobody did anything about it. Houses of prostitution were around town. I remember one of the biggest houses of prostitution was called the Chili Parlor. They had a little counter out in front. I think they made a pot of chili every month or so, and might have sold a bowl or 2 every once in a while, but actually it was a house of prostitution. Nobody did anything about it. And back in those days, nobody paid any attention to it. We had a city government. Well, that was rather loose. We had the mayor and city councilman, and they would run everything. Most of the men on the city council were either in the booze business or they rented the buildings that prostitutes and gamblers occupied, so they kept hands off of those people. We had a small police department. About all they did was pick up the drunks that were falling down. It was a wild town, really a wild town. But there was some good things about it. Nobody ever stole anything. And people paid their debts, I guess, because you could go downtown anywhere, buy anything you wanted to. If you lived in Anchorage, you could go downtown and buy anything you wanted to anywhere on a credit. And they never asked you any questions. Or you could walk into any store and cash a check. They never asked you any questions. They never took your telephone number. No, not anything like that. You never locked the door of your house. We lived over 20 years, 25 years or more in Anchorage, Alaska, and never had a key to our house. And never locked the house. The fact is, we were gone one time, over 3 weeks, and just left. Left the house unlocked, everything was fine. when we got back there. You never took the key out of your car. Nobody stole the car. One of the things, I guess, that prevented that, except for the fact that a lot of people up here were pretty friendly, the old timers. They were friendly and good neighbors and knew each other, was that if an undesirable character came around and he started stealing or giving anybody real trouble, cheating and lying and thieving, we had a fund in our city government, and the police would just go get that character, buy them a ticket back to Seattle, take them down and put them on a train and escort them down to Seward, put them on a ship and send them back to Seattle. Of course, the ACLU this day and age would prevent that, but we didn't have an ACLU in those days. They did have some codes up here, and that is you don't steal from anybody, and you don't cheat anybody, and you pay your bills when you get the money. That has changed some in Alaska now. But it's been my privilege to see Anchorage develop from a pioneer, rough sort of a town into a beautiful city where the people are proud of their city and proud of what it looks like. Well, we have just as fine a city as you can find, anywhere. Now, there's one difference. You better lock your doors and you better not leave the key in your car. And it'd be advisable to put a burglar alarm on your house even when you're in it and asleep. Because of the oil boom, the money that's been up here, the criminals have moved in, the dope peddlers have moved in, and it is rather difficult to imagine that there was a time in Anchorage when we really didn't have any crime except drunkenness. We had some immorality. We didn't have any public crime like we have now.